What you watch depends on what kind of mood you're in. Sometimes you're craving comedies like Friends or South Park, and sometimes you're more into dramas like HBO's Succession and House of the Dragon. There's also cooking shows like Chopped and Beat Bobby Flay, and even movies like The Lord of the Rings and Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Well, Max is the streaming destination that has the best of entertainment for whatever mood you're in anytime. And plans start at as little as $9.99 a month. Max, the one to watch. Subscription required. Visit max.com.
Walk the dogs, school drop-off, meetings from 10 to 3, take kids to soccer, then no time left for a jog.
When everyone else is relying on you, it's easy to put your needs last. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist online, so you can show up for yourself the way you do for others. Visit BetterHelp.com/positive to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/positive.
Jacob Albrocht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome in, everybody. It's Sports Daily. Jacob Albrocht, Tommy Castor, back with you on this Tuesday. The Denver Nuggets are champions, as you heard from Ted the Sports Head there in the update coming in. Glad to be here with you. History made for the Nuggets, a finals where they really were the best team all the way through in the postseason. Nice job there. Christian Braun, the KU Jayhawk, gets a title. Things looking up for Christian Braun right now. They do a good job, the Nuggets, and we'll talk about it. They get the title. Jokić is the best and, maybe the best player in the world. What does that mean, big picture? We'll get into all of it. And in the NBA, some other news for a team and a player that did not play in the finals. Fred VanVleet, big news yesterday. We'll get into that as well. We'll talk more about this conference realignment in the Big 12. So much more going on in the sports world. Tommy, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Looking forward to talking about the Denver Nuggets. That was a good series for the Nuggets for sure. I mean, I think silencing the naysayers saying that they'll never win a championship. And so looking forward to talking about that today.
And congratulations, by the way, to all of those fans of a team that hasn't won it yet. It's the best. If you're a fan of one of those teams, and can appreciate how good that feels. I'm a Rangers fan. We've been so close a couple of times, never been over the edge. And, for Royals fans, I think a lot of younger fans felt that way before they knocked off the Mets to get their World Series. It's a great feeling, and you feel good for those fans, and we're happy for Denver fans. There's a lot of Nuggets fans here, too, just Denver and Oklahoma City, the two closest teams to us here, and the Mavericks, I suppose. But, it's got some regional ties to us here. But that's out there. 869-1240 is the number on the IHOP hotline. Max Power in for Jad today. He'll take your calls. We've got you here on KFH. We've also got you on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for our video stream. So feel free to join in and chime in those ways as well. Salvi trade rumors also to talk about today, which I've been sort of dreading that potential topic as it's potentially coming up this week. But it's out there, so we'll talk about that a little bit as the Royals continue to struggle and what that might mean as one of the favorite players. But let's start with the Nuggets, Tommy. And, they were clearly the better team. I do think that Miami deserves some credit here in just keeping that competitive, because last night it was, certainly not neat. It was kind of an ugly game a little bit. Jokić was great, right, which doesn't surprise anybody. Jokić is always great. They were so clearly, I think, the best team in the postseason. It makes me wonder about, big picture. And is this the kind of team that can go on a little run? They certainly have a lot of talent. I think it probably matters more what the rest of the league does, but they get it done. And, Malone's never going to get the credit he deserves for this because it's all about Jokić, and that's fine. But man, they did a good job on Jimmy Butler in that series, and I thought that was as important as anything that happened. Butler, by his own standard, Tommy, scoring, just strictly scoring, 13, 21, 28, 25, 21. I think if you tell people that before the series, heading into it, most people probably take that 10 times out of 10 defensively against Jimmy Butler. When you know he's got to be the guy, he was good. He was okay, but he wasn't Jimmy Buckets, right, where he just shoulders it up and gets it up. I thought Denver did a good job with that. And they're a better team. They're more talented. We knew that coming in. They played it out. They stumbled one time. Miami kept it competitive, but it wasn't a particularly close series. And Denver's your champion, as we thought that they probably would be for a while now.
Well, I think that Denver is just an incredibly balanced team. You and I have discussed it before, how they just kind of handle their business, right? Like, there's not a whole lot of flash. There's not a whole lot of swagger. They just go out and they do what they need to do. I mean, look at Jokić, and he's a funny personality anyway, in that understated way, celebrating in only the way that Nikola Jokić can, where it's kind of like, no big deal. We won the championship. Time to go home now. It's kind of that's kind of the mentality of this team, right? Like, they put their head down. They go out, they eliminate the noise around them, and they go out and they handle their business night in and night out. They've done that all season long in an NBA nationally where people are never going to pay attention to them. They're always going to pay attention to the Lakers and to the Warriors in the West, right? Like, those two teams will always get the headlines. And then you've even got some other teams in that conference that will probably be a little bit more popular than they are. The Phoenix Suns come to mind. And, there are some other teams there that you just don't always think about the Nuggets. They just kind of go out there and handle things. That's what they did throughout the playoffs. I was especially impressed by them in this finals when they stumbled in game 2, because the effort level was really, really poor in game 2. And it was so unlike what we've seen from Denver, not only in the playoffs, but during the entire season. Like, you typically don't see the effort level being low for the Denver Nuggets. And there was, I think, some real concern there. Like, okay, like, did we see a little bit of, an issue here? Like, is there kryptonite for what the Nuggets, are typically able to do? And Michael Malone, to his credit, got that team re-energized, got the effort level up, and game 3, they basically showed you why they're the best team in the NBA, and then they put their foot on the gas and went from there. So I like that about them, where you saw not a good effort in game 2. They could have easily hung their heads and let Miami right back in the series. They didn't do that, and so they flexed a little bit in games 3, 4, and 5, and here we are. The Nuggets are champions.
Yeah, they're champions, and I do think they have a chance to get on a run. They're on a run sort of anyway, right? Like, they've been on a run. They've just been very unlucky until this year. Key players hurt. All kinds of different things have seemed to snakebite them a little bit, and they were able to take the step. And I think because in the NBA, I think more than any other sport, we look at things like that. Like, are we on a potential dynasty? And we may not be. This may be the only one they ever get, which is also celebrate it, enjoy it, Nuggets fans. You just never know. But I think they're set up to be able to make a run. I like their roster. Now their cap situation's probably a little difficult, so they'll have to navigate that, just like every great team does. But when you see young players like Christian Brown step up and have such an impact in the postseason, especially in the finals like he did, that gives you a little more hope. And it probably has more to do with what the rest of the league does too, right? And, who gets better. And we'll get into that with Fred VanVleet in a little bit later. But I think that, and for me, it all comes back to Jokić. I talked about this yesterday. Like, the storyline becomes Jokić, because I think there's a chance we're watching somebody who could get into that GOAT conversation. Now, he's not there yet, obviously. And when we talk about that, you're basically talking about what? Of the modern era, right? I'm only going to speak to the modern era, not go back further than I was able to watch. But of the modern era, you pretty much have Jordan and LeBron at this point. Can Jokić get into that category? I think he probably can, because who are the next guys in that conversation? Steph Curry's not going to get there, as great as he is.
Kevin Durant probably is in that conversation.
Probably Durant is the next guy, but Durant's not going to get there either.
If you're going back in time and including Jordan, Kobe's going to be in that conversation.
Kobe's in there. Yep. But I'm not going to put Kobe with Jordan and LeBron. But he's in there. He's either 3. Sure. He's probably either 3 or Durant is. And like, GOAT is all about winning longevity, right? All of those things. Like, do you do those Herculean things like we've seen those players do? I think Tim Duncan's got to be in that mix, but he's a different kind of player, so he's never going to be there. But when you talk about winning, doing all of those things, and you've got to also be great statistically, there's not a lot of guys on that list. And I think Jokić, because I think he's 28. He can get there. He's not there yet. But the only thing he needs, right, Tommy, is championships. Because statistically, if he's healthy and stays doing what he's been doing the last 3 or 4 years, statistically, he's going to be right there ahead of or with anybody. I mean, he set a record this year for leading the postseason in points, rebounds, and assists. What else can you do? I mean, defensively, I guess, is a consideration, and he probably will never be in the conversation with Jordan, LeBron, or Kobe in that area. But that's not everything, right? And so I think if he wins probably 2 more titles, I don't think 1 more will get it done, but 2 more could. I just think we're watching that, and I want us to appreciate it appropriately because I don't think we have up to this point. Like, I don't think we have appreciated over the last 2 years, 2 years he won the MVP into now. I don't think we have appreciated him appropriately. I haven't. I mean, I'm speaking for myself here, and I think the larger basketball community, I don't think people have appreciated him appropriately.
I think that there's going to be a challenge when the dust settles and Jokić is done, and you look back on his career, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, whatever that is. I think there's going to be a challenge in, regardless of what the statistical categories say, of recognizing him in the same category as the GOATs. And I think some of that has to do with just the style of play. Like, you watch him, and he's putting up these incredible numbers unlike we've ever seen before, right? And it's incredible statistically, but let's face it, it's not a thing of beauty. Like, it's not a thing of beauty to really watch him, right?
That's the problem. It's different than what we're accustomed to, so we don't appreciate it the way that we should. But
and I know that you specifically have drawn comparisons, and I think it's fair. I see it to an extent between Jokić and Dirk Nowitzki, but even with Dirk, I think his gameplay was a little bit prettier than what Jokić does, right?
His
like
fadeaway
a little
was
bit.
pretty. His fadeaway was pretty, but he was also kind of tall and lanky and looked a little bit clumsy, even though he was not. And the comparison for me between those two is more about how they're perceived, not about the style of play, obviously, because it's very, very different. But the way that they're perceived, and because it looks a little bit different, and I do think there's like a goofy feel to Jokić and Dirk, because they're not these, chiseled Adonises out there like Giannis is or LeBron is. Like, they're not these pro wrestler body, like just these physical specimens. They just don't look like it, right? Like we're used to in the NBA. And so sometimes I think it's a little like it fools us a little bit.
Or you look at, like, you go back in time and look at Jordan, who defied gravity, it seemed like. Like, that's not Nikola Jokić.
It's not a part of Jokic's game.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is the bottom line. And statistically, it's there. It doesn't matter how you do it, right? Like, it's irrelevant. Steph Curry changed the game, did it in a different way than we ever saw before. And his impact on the game, I may say this all the time about Steph. Like, I don't know that there, outside of Jordan, will ever be a player that changes the game as much as Steph did. I mean, look at the way guys play now. Look at the way the game's coached, the emphasis on the three-pointer, all of these things. Man, that's all Steph. So I don't think Jokić is going to be able to do that because he's unique in his size, right? Like, he's just not everybody's as tall as he is. But, yeah, it does look a little bit different. But that's okay. And I think this now gets the conversation going in that direction, because despite the 2 MVPs, despite all the stats, all of that stuff, I don't think it was there yet. And I think what you'll hear today and what we've heard through the finals is Jokić the best player in the NBA right now? And I think that this answers that question as emphatically yes. In an era of great players, like in an era of depth in the league of great players, and it sort of has rotated. we're on a 3-year stretch here where Jokić is pretty clearly the best player. And now with a title, I think he can easily make that case. But what I think we'll see the conversation shift to is, where does he stack up all time? Now, he's going to need more titles to do it. He's going to need probably at least 2 more. And then I think you can begin to have that conversation realistically. Because I'm not trying to say he is right now. I'm saying he's the best player right now, and he's this unique thing that we're watching. But I do think that possibility exists that he becomes in that conversation if he can win at that level, because statistically he's going to be there, I think. Unless something catastrophic happens, he'll be there statistically, doing things we've never seen before. His best seasons, Tommy, are better, offensively, when you're talking just about points, rebounds, and assists, than anybody we've ever seen in the modern era. Like, he's already been better than that because he, passes and rebounds at such a high level, together. LeBron's the next closest. But I don't know. I think we're on that trajectory, and I think the Nuggets are good enough to help him get there. That's the other part of it, is can the Nuggets sustain this? I think that they can, because they've been in this position for a long time. Again, they've just been really unlucky. I think they'll be in the mix at least the next 3 or 4 years, if not more. They may have to reinvent themselves a little bit, but that's okay. And they're going to have Malone and Jokić now, you would think, although Milwaukee had Giannis and Budenholzer, and that's already broken up. So you think this is sustainable, but we'll see. I think it is, and I love it because I think it makes the NBA more interesting when you have those conversations.
Yeah, and I think that what makes this title more impressive to me for the Nuggets is, you and I talked about it before, the amount of pressure that I think was on the shoulders of the organization. Because if they didn't get it done this season with Jokić, they weren't going to get it done at all, in my opinion. Like, with the team that was surrounding Jokić, with the head coach there, if they couldn't get a title with that roster, then if I'm Nikola Jokić, I'm thinking, I got to go somewhere else if I want to get a title, because, everything was, I think, in place and laid out almost on a silver platter for the Nuggets to get a championship. And like you had mentioned, they had been unlucky in years past with injuries and, whatever. That was off the table this year. Like, that, none of that was there. They lost 7 times at home the entire season. They were pretty clearly the best team in the NBA for basically the entire season. So everything else, anything you could chalk up as an excuse for them to not get a title in years past, that was gone this season. And so the fact that they were able to overcome that amount of pressure to win a title for Nikola Jokić and to keep this team together, that's what makes it impressive towards me. And, I mentioned it before the series even started, that I felt like even though Denver was a better team, Miami was going to be intriguing because they were playing with house money, and they had been for so long, and all the pressure was on the shoulders of the Nuggets, and Denver was able to actually block all that out and get the championship. And so I think that layer of it makes it that much more impressive for me.
Agree. And the other part of that is, too, like, they were such heavy favorites going into the finals, facing an 8 seed, right? That would have also not been forgivable,
right?
Regardless of what happened. So they're there.
Regardless of what
Christian
we've seen
Brown
from Miami
it.
throughout the entire playoffs,
doesn't matter.
At the end of the day, they were still an 8 seed.
Yep, and clearly less talented, right? Without their second best player, arguably, in Tyler Hero. So, yeah, there was going to be no excuse on the table, and it doesn't matter. Denver got it done. Denver did exactly what it needed to do, and congratulations again to all the Nuggets fans. Congratulations to Christian Brown, the Kansas native, the Kansas Jayhawk. I know Bill Self was there. He tweeted. That's a lot of fun too. Very interested to see his career. Another guy we're interested to watch the career of, Fred VanVleet. Massive news yesterday. That's where we'll head next. Sports Daily rolling through. IHOP hotline open for you, 869-1240. You think Jokić can get into that GOAT conversation? Let us know. You can also leave us your comments on our video stream. We're just getting warmed up on a Tuesday here on Sports Daily. It's Albrocht and Caster. We'll be right back.
When the whole family comes together to watch the game, nobody wants to miss a second of the action to run to the grocery store. With Instacart, you can get all your weekly groceries in as fast as an hour. Less time shopping means more game time. Let's go. Visit instacart.com to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. $10 minimum per order. Additional terms apply. When life gets crazy busy, and when doesn't it? Walmart helps you keep it all together, now with a little help from Instacart. If you need your groceries now-ish, but your options for going to Walmart are later-ish or never-ish, you can get everything you need delivered through Instacart right to your door in as fast as an hour. Skip the shop and savor more of your crazy busy life with Walmart and Instacart. Visit instacart.com to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply.
Looking for an adventure? Find yours in a Toyota truck. Like a Tacoma, the ultimate off-road machine. With available crawl control, you'll tackle anything in your way. Or an electrified Tundra with more power than ever before and a spacious high-tech cabin that puts you in charge. Or go with the legendary 4Runner, always reliable and durable over the toughest terrain. No matter your adventure, Toyota has you covered. Visit buyatoyota.com for more, and let's go places.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
National championship for Kansas, NBA championship for the Nuggets, back-to-back years. Feels pretty good to be Christian Braun today. He's being celebrated. Man, the country fell in love with him, Tommy. He's like become this darling here, which is it's really, really interesting to see him do sort of the same thing, right, that he did at Kansas. And just imagine back to like the early Kansas career of Christian Braun. I don't know that very many people envisioned this, but it's really cool to see. Fred VanVleet, on the other hand, and we make the transition here on Sports Daily, he kind of did you would expect big things from coming out of college basically right away. And he was such a force in college basketball, in the attitude and all that. And those are, by the way, some of the same things that make Christian Braun great. Attitude, right? And Fred VanVleet yesterday, the big news from Woj at ESPN that VanVleet is declining his player option for the final year in Toronto, basically walking away from $23 million to become a free agent. And he'll earn more than that, Tommy. There are rumors he could become a max player. The possibilities are endless on where he ends up back in Toronto. To a team that has a lot of money to spend, or maybe to a team that wants to do a sign and trade, give Toronto some picks and make money that way. Fred VanVleet will be one of the biggest names out there this year in free agency. The timing for him this year is fantastic because he is the guy. He is the guy this year.
Yeah, and I would be absolutely shocked if he ends up going back to Toronto. I just don't see that happening. And the reason for that, I mean, I think that also, he can make a lot of money elsewhere. But remember, Nick Nurse is not there anymore. Adrian Griffin is not there anymore. There's big time turnover with the Raptors. And so it wouldn't surprise me one bit if he ends up going somewhere else.
Well, doesn't it seem like a sign and trade too? Because they can give him a ton of money and then he can end up wherever because it can come as a sign and trade. If I understand this correctly, he can make the most money in Toronto. So if he signed there, then could be traded. That does make some sense, and I think allows a little more wiggle room to end up with a big-time contender. And so, Chicago, I think, will always be in play for Fred VanVleet. He's from that area, loves that area, and you could have it in mind. I would imagine that he will put some emphasis on winning championships. But I don't know that, right? Like, he's got a chance to do a lot of things. He's got a chance to go be somebody's star. He's got a chance to join a group and solidify a title contender. The possibilities are sort of endless in this free agency, but, he'll get paid. And I don't think you walk away unless you're going to get paid, and that's why he's doing this. So where is that done? Again, I'd say watch Chicago. And then sort of all bets are off on the sign and trade. It gets complicated in the NBA. I do think there's a chance he returns to Toronto. I mean, I think there's a chance that he rides that out there and just uses this position that he's earned to make more money. Man, it's fascinating. It's what a career so far, and it's about to take the next step.
And I just wonder, with whatever team he goes to, assuming he doesn't go back to Toronto, if he signs with another team or if there's a sign and trade, is Fred VanVleet the caliber of player that turns whatever team he goes to into an instant NBA title contender? I think that he certainly has the skill set to improve a team for sure, right? I mean, like, that's for sure going to happen. I don't know. I think that's an interesting conversation. Is he the caliber of player that teams would look at saying, we have to get VanVleet on our roster because that will get us over the hump to win an NBA title?
To get over the hump, absolutely. Yes, I think he is. I think he can be the final piece of a team that puts them, in the mix. I mean, he had 19 and 7 this past season, 7 assists. I mean, he's been really, really good over his career now. And I just, you get into those conversations with what does that play as, but we've seen him be capable of being the guy in individual games. And I think that matters. If you know anything about Fred VanVleet, and it's funny to even see, in conversations like Woj yesterday when talking about this, he's a known winner. He brings winning to the table. I can't even remember how he phrased it, but it's absolutely what it is, right? Like, Fred's what did we just talk about? Like, that killer instinct that went, like, that's what he does better than anything. It's what he's always done better than anything. And statistically now over his NBA career, he's basically scored 20 points a game for 3 straight years. He was an all-star last year. His assists are he's basically a 20 and 7 guy consistently now, we'll call it between 18 and 20 and around 7 for 4 years now. We got a proven commodity here. Every team would love to have that. He is a more than capable 3-point shooter. He's a good defensive player, and so. Yeah, I think he absolutely puts somebody over the hump. Now, can he go somewhere and become like this star individual? I don't know, but I don't know how much that's appealing anyway. Like, I would hate to see Fred go do that. I'd rather see him go somewhere where he compete for titles. So, and there's a lot of teams, by the way, where you can do that, where his skill set does put you over the hump, for sure. I mean, imagine Miami. There's a team right there. Look at Miami this year. There's 1,000. Look at the Clippers. You could reunite with Kawhi Leonard, perhaps. The Lakers. My goodness. Like, there are a lot of places Fred can land, get paid, and try to win titles. And I hope that's where he ends up. Chicago makes sense geographically. Chicago's an up-and-coming team that, they think Lonzo Ball's going to be out forever now with an injury. They could really use the hometown return of Fred VanVleet.
Is there a fit maybe in Phoenix if they get rid of Chris Paul, like, the rumors are?
Sure there is. I just don't know
financially. Think about him with Devin Booker together.
I know. I'm not smart enough financially to know how that all works. So I don't know how to answer that. I don't know on the sign and trade. I know, like, it's harder in the NBA, I feel like, even than it is in the NFL to understand this cap stuff. And so I don't know that part of it. But all I hope for Fred is, because I think he's going to get a max or close to it, I just hope he ends up with a contender, because I think.
Man. I just had a thought. For God's sakes, team him up with Luka in Dallas. That'd be a ton of fun.
Yeah, but Luka's a point, so I don't know how that would fit. Because Brunson, we were kicking around the office yesterday, and we were like, who's the point in New York? And somebody said Jalen Brunson. I'm like, Jalen Brunson? He wasn't the point in Dallas. Luka was. So, I don't know. Yeah, that would be cool, but it would be cool just because I like the Mavericks. But Oklahoma City, up-and-coming team. Could you make a case to put Fred on that young roster to infuse just that, winning attitude with a bunch of young players? Yeah, I think you could. And I think that kind of thing makes sense for Fred too. It's just like, go back, undrafted, all the chatter, like, bet on yourself, all of it. He's likely going to turn into a max player in the NBA. That is crazy. I think even the most optimistic people, when thinking about Fred as a pro, would not have thought of him as a max player. I mean, you'd have to really look around the NBA, because I would have to talk to like an historian about this, but has there been a more decorated and like from undrafted to this story in the NBA? Like, I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I can Google a best undrafted players list, and we'll just take a look here.
I mean, I don't think that there is.
Here's what Sporting News says, which we pull up off the top here. He's probably going to top this list. They have him actually as number 6, and I don't know how old this list is. But Udonis Haslem is 5. I'll take Fred over Haslem. Bruce Bowen, that's a good one. I'll probably take Fred over Bruce Bowen. His career average was 6 points a game. John Starks, give me Fred. Connie Hawkins is probably that's a good one, and Ben Wallace is a really good one too.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're getting in there with a conversation of like the best ever undrafted player for Fred. That's pretty wild. And he's about to become a max player, and if he gets into the right spot, have a chance to win some titles. And here's the coolest thing about all of it. He's already pledged to give a bunch of money back to Wichita State to help build a weight room. Like, he is a flag bearer for Shocker basketball, and maybe, perhaps, the most important one they could have, because any player you're recruiting, and not that it will have anything to do now with the way Fred was brought up, because different coach, different everything, but still, you've got this guy who came to Wichita State, played a bunch of years, had opportunities to go other places, did not. Would have been. Could you imagine Fred in the NIL space? I mean, he would have cashed in big time here, and came and became the max player. That helps. That's going to help Paul Mills recruit players in. Like, there's no reason to go anywhere else. Why wouldn't you come here and be a star like Fred was? And remember Fred's numbers back in college. I mean, I don't think he ever scored more than about 13 points a game in college, because nobody ever did on the Shockers. And here he is. And there's this track record, and credit to Greg Marshall for finding these players. But when you talk about Fred, and Ron Baker had a nice time in the NBA, and Landry Shamet and Austin Reeves and all these players that were recruited in there, like, that becomes you put, and Austin Reeves is going to get paid too, by the way. He's not going to be a max player. I don't even know if he's eligible, but he's going to get paid when he gets a chance. But Fred's about to become a max guy. And those are all Shockers within the last, 7 years.
Yeah, my favorite thing about Fred, thinking back to the draft, the year that he was in the draft class and didn't get drafted, I remember, and I might be completely forgetting the way that this whole thing played out, but I feel like I remember going through draft night and thinking, man, it's a tragedy he didn't get drafted. Like, I don't think that there was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was something that everybody thought he should have been, right? It wasn't like he was completely off the radar, right?
He was fringy.
Yeah.
He's 6'1". I mean, that's it. He's 6'1". And there wasn't anybody on the planet, I don't think, that didn't love the kind of player he was.
Yeah.
He went through
the
that
energy,
process.
the tenacity,
and
the intensity, all of that.
Everything. If you ever heard him talk in college, it was like, you might have 10 years on him, but he seems like the elder statesman, right? You want to tell him yet, you know what I mean? But he was 6'1", and that matters in the NBA. How does a player like Steph Curry, not the number 1 overall pick, right? Size matters, and I think that held him back a little bit, but that. Honestly, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to Fred, because if there's ever been a chip on the shoulder, prove it player, I'm not taking anybody. Like, that's the kind of juice you get in Jordan and Kobe, like that, like, watch me kind of attitude. And he is as loaded with that, always has been. Nobody wears a chip on their shoulder better than Fred VanVleet. And, being 6'1" in the NBA, as I sit here at whatever I am, 5'9", like, I get it. Like, I get being, when you're trying to do things competitively, and size isn't at your advantage. He's had to overcome that, and he has, and it's less of a hindrance now in the NBA, I think, than it ever has been. I mean, size obviously still matters, but guys like Fred have a place now, and it's so awesome to see, and I love it, and I cannot wait to see where he ends up. I don't really have, like, a hope of where he ends up. I don't really care. I just want it to be somewhere that we're always still talking about Fred VanVleet, number one. And number two, that he has a chance to play in the postseason consistently, because I think that's where he'll shine. And, wherever that is, it's going to be cool. And maybe there's a pipe dream. Maybe he can end up closer to us here. And fans will have a chance to go see him a little more often than in Toronto, although I'd invite anybody to go up to Toronto. It's a pretty cool place. But Fred VanVleet is going to be a max player. Let that sink in. He opted out of $23 million. He said, no, thank you. That's just crazy to me.
Bet on yourself. That's what he does. It's what he's always done.
Right now.
So, as soon as that player option was on the table, I think, knowing him historically and the decisions he's made.
Well, he's
come on, like it was a no-brainer. He was going to decline that option and go bet on himself.
He's so savvy that, you're walking away from 23, but you're at least going to make 10 more probably this year, and you're going to get a much bigger deal in totality because he knows he'll deliver on it, right? And he probably safer to take a nice, healthy extension in Toronto or do whatever, but he's betting on himself for sure, and he's going to bet on himself to pick the right spot too. So Fred VanVleet, free agent, one we will watch very, very closely over the coming months. And as I understand it, July 1st is when we get official news, but we'll probably start to hear chatter pretty quick because he is. Go look at the free agent list. He's at the top. And so his courting will be very, very high profile and front and center. It's Sports Daily here on KFH. Glad to be with you on the program today. It is Albrock. It is Castor back with you on a Tuesday. I've got you one more day this week before we hit the road again here. For me, it was, I go out to the West Coast to see my in-laws and family, and my mother-in-law wanted to take the kids to Disneyland, and it's one of those like, all right, guys, we're probably never doing this again. And so we went to Disneyland one day, and we went to California Adventures the next day. It's an experience. I went to Disneyland when I was like 4, and then haven't been back until now. And I don't remember a lot of it except being really scared on one of the rides at 4. But now it's more about you realize how often you're going to stand in line. And I don't know how Disney's done it. But to take the amount of money they take from you on these experiences and have you stand in line for hours and hours and hours. I think we were there like 12 hours each day. And, in those 12 hours, we definitely spent, 60% of it in a line, but probably closer to 80%. But they got a good thing going there at Disney. Hey, give us all your money, and you can come in here and you can stand in our lines like that, because that's what you do more of than anything else. So we go to Disneyland the first day. It was cool. Some of the experience, like the new rides and stuff, are really cool. It takes a long time to get through them. You certainly can't ride everything. There's not enough time in the day, and there's just tons and tons of people. And then the next day we went to California Adventures, and California Adventures I thought was better. There were more like characters walking around and showy type stuff, and the rides were just as cool. And Tommy, the number one key, if you're going to stand in line for hours on end, you gotta have some beer or something to help you power through. And so they don't have that on the Disney side. They have it on the California Adventure side, though.
There you go.
And I think I text you this. So this is day 2 now. So after one 12-hour day, and after the first, leg of the second day, my son turned 4, so he's right on the fringy nap. But they absolutely had to have naps here because they were just so drained from all the senses. And so it's like, all right, you guys go ride some rides. I gotta get him to sleep. So we brought this massive stroller thing, and I was like, we'll put him in the stroller. I'll walk him around the park. And I'm like, I got it. I'll volunteer. Might seem like I'm being, taking one for the team there, but in reality, it's like you guys stand in that line to go to that ride there. I'm gonna take him for a walk. We'll get him to sleep. But the secret to that is, Tommy, you just make your way, you grab a beer, and now this walk to get your son to nap becomes this walk around an amusement park with a beer. It became, that was one of my favorite parts about the day, was just like that zone out, take it all in, sip a beer moment while everyone else has to stand in another line for some other, ride or whatever. But yeah, California Adventures, if you want the hack there, if you have to only pick one, that one has beer.
Yeah, I feel like you've kind of cracked the code a little bit. I'm a big proponent, and it doesn't matter if it's an amusement park or, I don't know, a shopping mall or anything that's public. In fact, I did this on social media a while back, a definitive ranking of like where guys can sit, like benches and rocking chairs and like things like that. Like I'm always on the lookout for where can I sit down, whether I'm shopping with my wife or going to an amusement park. So it sounds like you've cracked the code with not only a nice place to sit, but maybe even an adult beverage or two. So kudos to you. That's pretty fantastic.
So here's the thing. This is, and I probably am unique. I don't like sitting. That's the other thing. Like, that's the other reason I would volunteer to push the stroller around. And I've been this way. Like, I don't go to the bar anymore because I'm too old and I have 3 kids and too many things to do. But like in those days, like I don't like to sit down. Like it to the point now where it's like, no, you guys can all sit. I'll stand next to you because it like makes me tired. It sort of drains the energy a little bit. So I actually like to stand up. Now I don't like standing in line. Let me clarify that
Give me a rocking chair all day.
No.
Like I'm one of those old souls. Like I love Cracker Barrel because man, I just want to sit in that rocking chair outside.
You love Cracker Barrel?
Of course. Who doesn't?
I don't hate Cracker Barrel, but I certainly don't love Cracker Barrel. I think it's a little boring and maybe a touch overrated. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I like a lot of things about Cracker Barrel. Let me rephrase that. Like that vibe is cool. I like that. The breakfast is pretty good. It's pretty good. But I mean, I dated a girl one time that really liked Cracker Barrel, and all I could ever think every time was like, you're the most boring person ever. Like, you want to go to Cracker Barrel? Okay. Like, we're at this point in life, like,
was
20.
she 80? Oh, okay. So she was 20
Right.
and she liked Cracker Barrel. Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. Now it's like, okay, I can go with my kids, but then I got to walk through the gift shop, and they're just going to bug me about buying stuff, and I don't want to buy anything. I just want to buy some eggs and bacon, you know? I'm fine with Cracker Barrel. But in those... You know, in those times, like I want to move around, I want to do those things. So Disneyland is something. It is a lot of people. That doesn't bother me, but I know that bothers people. So if you don't like crowds and you don't like rubbing shoulders with strangers and, you know, all the different smells that come with that, be careful. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't care about that stuff. Doesn't, you know, like whatever. I can go stand in a crowd of people. But it was cool. The rides are cool. But be ready to stand in line. I don't know how you do it often, and I've heard Disney World is even worse.
Yeah, I've never done Disneyland. I've done Disney World a couple of times, and yeah, it's crazy busy. So I imagine that they're both probably about the same.
Our kids loved it. I'm very appreciative of the in-laws for taking us out there. Glad we got it in. My son wore his first day back to school today, had his Disney birthday shirt on, was excited to show that off and, you know, let gloat a little bit, I think, whether he would admit it or not. But, you know, I'll take it. But we're back here for another day, and then I got to take another trip. I'm going to be a zombie next week when we return for the full swing. Let's talk about this Salvi trade when we return on Sports Daily. I don't know, man. It's a rumor, and it might be even more than that. The more that comes out on this each hour, really, there's a chance Salvi may not be a Royal ever again after this year. That makes my heart hurt. We'll talk about it next on Sports Daily.
Left Out Loud Mornings with Bob and Tom.
Nationals baseball is in full swing.
Strike 3 called. He got him looking. That's 10 strikeouts for Mackenzie Gore.
With the free Odyssey app, local fans can listen live all summer long, whether you're at the grill or at the pool.
Going, and gone. Goodbye. C.J. Abrams, a grand slam.
Nationals baseball. Nationals announcers. Streaming live on the free Odyssey app. AUDACY. Get in the game and download it today.